Thanks so much for tuning in to Ladies Who Line, an online panel discussion delving deeper into the studio practices of 5 female artists and how drawing in particular plays a big role in their work. My name is Lauren Amalia Redding, and I'm an artist, writer, and the co-founder of H&R Studio in Southwest Florida, which is hosting this panel. I'm very happy to both moderate and participate in this panel, and very grateful to be joined by Gabriela Handal from Brooklyn, New York, Aurore Le Philipponnat from Bordeaux, France, Helena La Rota Lopez from New York, New York, and Sherry Wheat from Grandview on Hudson, New York. As I'm sure you guys have figured out, this panel has been pre-recorded due to a difference in our time zones. Also, as I'm sure you figured out, this panel's title, Ladies Who Line, riffs off of the popular moniker Ladies Who Lunch, a pretty self-explanatory description of upper crust ladies who fill their calendar with lunch dates. Our panelists, though, are anything but. They're hardworking, ingenuitive women who lead creative lives. There's not a lot of time for social climbing when you've got to make drawings and artwork that's both intelligent and exploratory. Though you're going to learn a lot about our panelists in a moment, you can learn more about them by checking out the description in this video. It has not just links to their website, but also their social media tags so that you can follow them and see their future work. So, speaking of our panelists, we're about to begin by letting them introduce themselves. Thanks again so much for tuning in to Ladies Who Line. Gabriela, if you want to start us off and introduce yourself.
Okay, that's even more embarrassing that my name is Gabriela Handal, and I am a draftsman from Panama, and I like to draw. These are all drawings that I have behind me because I really like drawing, and I favor drawing all the time in basically every occasion that I can that is just possible for me. And I tend to draw the figure really the great majority of the time, and I tend to gravitate towards self-portraits somewhat often also. Yes, awesome. Drawing for the win.
Awesome. And Aurore, how would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name is Aurore Le Philipponnat, and I'm a French drawer, I would say, not painter. Because mostly I never paint, so I don't know. I'm sorry. It's so hard for me to describe what I do in English. It's freaking hard.
No, and for everyone watching,
French, we have like English subtitles, and I speak in French. It'd be awesome.
No, your English is great, Aurore, and having your work behind you right there, and with the images we're going to have up, everyone will literally be able to see for themselves how incredible it is.
Yeah.
So then, Helena,
just to say, so I am a French painter, drawer, and I mostly draw figurative art with charcoal and dark and black pencil. I don't know if you guys have done some University of Art, Fine Art, things like that. But me, it was like university, so it's mostly oriented to history and, like to teach eventually. But not technically, it was not truly learn the practice by itself. So it's mostly technically things.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you're primarily self-taught. That's really cool.
Nice.
Very cool. And Helena, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a Colombian artist based in Brooklyn. I might be the odd dog. I sometimes tend to be the odd dog because the story of my life has been I can't decide which discipline to choose, so I just try to play with all of them. And I came to New York initially when, oh God, I was 17 and I wanted to do theater, which is like it seems like a million lifetimes ago, and they studied liberal arts and just fell in love with studying and art history and astronomy and music, and eventually they found art making as a device to put all of these together. And drawing has played a really key part in, not so much, I mean, there are finished pieces, but mostly in the process, like thinking process, and everything that has to do with blueprints for installations and performance. And so that's been more of the trajectory of drawing within my practice. But I think I had an academic training later as a master's degree, and it really impacted me, seeing how, like, the masterful level of drawing that is possible. It hadn't even hit me. So then trying to explore that avenue has been really fulfilling. But yeah, I'm the crazy person doing all the different, like, weird, it's like, take all the stuff, put it together in a soup, go.
No, that's what I think is so incredibly magnetic about your work. And so, Sherry, how would
Yes,
you?
I know. Let's see. I have always been drawing, and when I was a child, they were sort of let us loose in the woods and the foothills of the Catskill Mountains, and I would lie on top of these big rocks and draw with coal all day. And I feel that those experiences of spending all those days in the forest and feeling my body against the rock and making the mark on the surface has so much to do with the way I make work right now. I do primarily large drawings, and I sculpt, and I use marble dust, earth pigments, and I use like a somatic mark that feels like the scale of the body when I'm working. And I spent a lot of time in Italy traveling, and a lot of time living in Rome, and it made me really feel confirmed that I wanted to make drawings that were that were not in linear time. That's one of the simple ways that I could describe it. And so it's been a sort of a major influence on my work, thinking about all different times existing at the same time, in a sense, even in the mark. I can talk about that more further.
Yeah,
as I
we'll
go,
get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into that. That's a
Yeah,
lot
because
of-
it sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I'm not the best moderator, because had I followed my own self-appointed instructions of going in alphabetical order, Sherry, I would have introduced myself ahead of you, but I would feel very
It's okay.
egotistical doing that. So
Go right ahead.
So I'm Lauren. I'm one of the co-founders of H&R Studio, which is hosting this panel. And like Gabriella said, go drawing. I pretty much just draw entirely. And like a few of our panelists, I've either attended or have ties to the New York Academy of Art, which really cemented the importance of drawing from life in particular, regardless of what kind of reference I have access to or use now within my own studio. My undergrad degree is from Northwestern University, just north of Chicago. And I think aside from drawing, probably the other big part of my studio practice would be writing. And that was definitely something that was kind of honed more at Northwestern. That was more like Helena, you were talking about kind of a more rounded liberal arts background. And that was definitely what I got there. So, you know, for me, you know, lines appear both in my drawings and you know, when I write, and everything else is just kind of to supplement that. So, and as I was saying earlier, I've always kind of dreamed of curating an exhibition of women artists who incorporate drawing in really interesting ways or very dominant ways. In our current world, I really am not sure how that's going to happen. So here we are on this online.
It's just a matter of time. It will.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was really, really geeking out to get the four of you guys together, because I've admired your work for a long time. and admired you guys as people and everything you do and the tenacity that you have within your own studio practice also. And, you know, you think about women artists, you think about empowerment. You guys kind of embody that to me, just with the verve with which you work and experiment and create. And I think it's so valuable for people to see women working who tackle visual problem solving with such intelligence and ingenuity. You know, it's not fun, happy hobby time. You know, it's really getting down to some damn hard work. So we've all touched a little bit on the roles that drawing plays within our studio practice. So we'll kind of go back to Gabriella a little bit. Can you elaborate more on when you said basically like all drawing all the time, and kind of tell us a little bit about how you start drawings, the content of your drawings, just kind of whatever you'd like to say about that.
The starting part of the drawing kind of depends a little bit for me. It's kind of a mixture of the medium that I decide to use and not so much the subject matter, I guess, because the subject matter is generally the figure or nature more broadly. But, you know, like I said earlier, I do focus on the figure. So the figure, which if it's like terrifying enough, because I guess that also factors in like how I feel. It's kind of like scary sometimes to start something. I don't know if it happens to anyone else. I mean, it probably does.
Yeah.
We're not that unique or anything. It's like I draw one line. There's nothing on the paper, but I draw the one line and I'm like, erase immediately. Like that happens really irritatingly often. But then, so I think I mentioned depending on the medium, when I'm afraider of something, if I don't feel like super confident, I learned that at the academy actually, that I feel very not confident necessarily, but not precious, and just like jumping in head first into something like it. Doing that with charcoal on paper, on like the bigger type drawings, you know, like medium to large format. With charcoal, there's something about charcoal that to me, or I'm not sure exactly why, but for me is conducive to just jumping in head first and being able to confidently play, not necessarily get it right on the first line, but play. And so I guess that's only one example of how I get drawing started. But I mean, I guess in terms of subject matter, I always just want to continue to study the figure in some capacity, and I feel like I do that in different ways in all the drawings. Because like even when I'm drawing self-portraits, like I mean, you know, you could argue that my head is like the most familiar thing I'm with because I look at it all the time, and I have at this point drawn it several times. But you never, you know, I don't feel like I ever finish knowing like the surface of anything really, because I guess that's why I feel like I could draw the figure an infinite amount of times, or really the portrait an infinite amount of times, because I never finish getting to know the surface of it and how it changes. Like, you know, like for example, hopefully I get to draw myself, my own head across time, meaning as I age and stuff, and it's like, oh, it's like there's new stuff happening on the surface now, clearly. So I don't even really know if I answered your question at this point, but
no, I think that's really kind of perfect, because it kind of goes back to what Sherry was saying a little bit about drawing things that are kind of, in a way, like you're suspending the surface you talk about in a chronological pathway through time, which also kind of is a timeless concept in and of itself.
Yeah.
So I think that's really poignant, because it's not just a rote copying of the figure in front of you. It's thinking about its placement, which is really poignant.
I really like what you said about not knowing, because there's something so thrilling about having that blank piece of paper and starting to mark on it. And
yes,
and I was excited about what you said about you put a mark down and then you take it away. You put it down, take it away. And I was thinking, oh, this is my torture. And so I was talking about it. And so I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And Degas says this beautiful thing that beautiful things come out of renunciation. And I feel like my work is I put something down and I take it away and I'm putting down something else. And you don't know if it's better, you know, or so I started photographing the whole process, but to see what happens, like what really is happening there, because I need to know that, like, am I spinning my wheels or not? But the whole thing is very, very interesting about not knowing where you're going when you begin. And it reminds me of there's this practice in ancient Rome where birds would be in the sky and they say it means this and it means that, you know, and it would be divination. And I'm putting a little dark here and a little light here, and like, and it's got to making for it to mean something to me. It's this kind of quality, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been photographing the steps of your work like that, Sherry?
I just did it with a head every single day till I finished it for like the past 2 weeks. And I'm doing it on a big piece I'm working on because frankly, it's almost like a safety thing for me. If I wipe it out, I say to myself, I can put it back somewhere if I needed to. And it's really, it's just constantly taking chances, right? And tremendous responsibility.
Yeah. Tremendous responsibility. Terrifying,
for the whole
tremendous
thing.
Responsibility.
Yeah, really.
But then the other option is like, you never get to have this great thing unless you just like the fun of seeing what it is, unless you go all the way.
Absolutely.
So sometimes I say to myself, what do you really want?
that is like a black hole of a question.
Yeah, really.
Every drawing is an attempt to answer that. That's really great. And so, Aurora, you have this beautiful drawing behind you that we can see. So I kind of want to ask you what I asked Gabriella. Your content is a little bit darker. It pulls a lot from art history, and you also use charcoal, from what I can tell. So how did you get inspired by that kind of work and that kind of medium?
Yeah, to explain the medium by itself, maybe it's also more like technical, also just by learning by myself. I think the first thing you do when you want to start to draw, this is just to take a pencil, I guess. This is the first main thing you would do. You have a paper, you have a pencil. So instinctively, this is where I went to say, okay, I'll try with it. And I felt so comfortable, like even the charcoal and the texture of the sticks and that you can transform like to like powder, you can mix with water or varnish. You can do so much things with just this like stick, you know. And also I've always been more, as I said, more a drawer also. So for me, it's more comfortable also like to have some details. This one specifically is on graphite.
Okay. Yep. Perfect.
It's not charcoal. Yeah. And I love like to work with like very small details. So I will work just with the random, like, you know, can be this one. And so, yeah,
It's
mechanical pencil. Thank you.
And, we can tell it had a very small point.
And so yeah, for me it's maybe the most comfortable way to work too. And about like, yeah, I know my work has been more like darker in the past, really dark. I have a lot of thematic that had been like, for some people they couldn't really understand like the person I am and related to like the work I was doing. There was like this like gap, I would say, between me and my work. But I really need to express like the darkness from the inside. And I've always trying to more show the light from the darkness. I like to show like more the Caravage, you know?
Yeah.
And it's more like to show the light from the darkness mostly. And now it's been like, I don't know if there's a relation with, but since I had my baby and I'm a mother, I've more being naturally attracted to like something more like nice to look, like things nicer to do, and soft and inspired by classical art. I think it's very, very also interesting to work from sometimes the work of other artists that were very, very, very good. This drawing specifically is an inspiration from Octave Tassert. Maybe you know, I don't know, is wonderful. For me, he's a wonderful painter, and his work is awesome. And sometimes when I want to do like a break in my own drawings, like work, I will try to see what some other artists have done before, and I will like spend 1 month or 1 week or whatever, like, and just work from their can say pattern, like I will. Yeah.
You do it to change your pattern.
Yeah, I want to change my pattern just to try different
that's
ways.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is it mostly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think
Yeah, it
it's
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's so healthy, you know,
Yeah.
going like, you know, again, Aurora, you know, like you're a little worried about your English participating. Your English is great. And then the same way you can handle 2 verbal languages, it's so cool that you switch different languages within your drawing too.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
think you're like a language expert.
Oh, okay.
And so, Helena, I am so fascinated by your work because you're a multidisciplinary artist. And I think it's probably fair to say that your drawings, as you were saying earlier, kind of serve more as like an armature and a way to flesh out certain ideas, and certain ideas kind of coming together within your art practice. First of all, you win like the most beautiful penmanship in the world award. Even your penmanship is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm a big fan of your work because I think there's such a candor in your willingness to chart things out and integrate different things and have drawing be a part of that puzzle. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the whole kit and caboodle. So can you tell us a little bit more about kind of everything you do and how drawing might kind of needle into it a little bit?
Of course. I think actually what Gabriela was saying about, you know, the hesitance of putting down the mark and then going back and deleting it. I think that's kind of what made me at the beginning, because the first art teacher I had, like the first person who told me you should be an artist, and I'm so happy I listened. He did like at the moment it was my worst nightmare, but now I'm really grateful for it because he actually only let me draw with pen. Because it's just like, well, now you can't erase, because I wouldn't move forward. I was so paralyzed because I love to contemplate the filigree of what things are made of. So then if you go outside and you try to draw a tree, and I still remember like the words, and it's still in my head when I'm drawing. It's just spread the detail. Spread the detail, because you'll start like drawing the vein of the leaf, and then the shape of the leaf, and then like the whole creature. And that's, I think, something that kind of translates to my practice as a whole, is how to try to capture a macrocosm. And if you can't capture it in its full complexity, how can you use symbols, you know, in order to bring it down to something tangible? And that's, I think, when writing comes in really handy, because writing is symbols. Writing is like, with a single word you can conceptualize something that is much bigger than itself. And in that sense, I think diagrammatic drawing, when doing blueprints, when doing, because I think it wasn't until the academy, actually, for my thesis project, that I thought I can, you know, I kind of want to go full out. And I had this idea that had been cooking for a long time, about a monster and the labyrinth that led to the monster. And I decided, you know, when the heck else am I going to get a year to work only on this full time and get to
Yeah.
pour in all my energy and all my resources, and this is my job. I'm like, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, insane. To this day, I have absolutely no idea how I managed to do it, but much of it was an insane amount of planning,
Mm-hmm.
because the studios that we had were something like 10 by 10 feet, less than that.
Mm.
they
Even
were
the
small.
studio as a second year, they're pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this installation was 15 feet in diameter
Oh my
and
God.
20 feet high. So it was like all the logistics, all the mechanics of it had to be figured out ahead of time. All of the
Mhm.
angles and then all of the materials, and it was a lot of math, and I
Mhm.
had so much fun, because ever since I started, I've always been in love with Da Vinci, his
Mm.
anatomical studies, his schematics for everything from the motion of water to war machines to his ballistic charts. It's incredible.
It is.
And it's all drawing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all line work. So the way that you can chart something much larger and much complicated inside a schematic, it also makes me think of astronomy. The way that astrolabes work, the way that something as astonishingly deep as the sky can be charted in a little handheld computer.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful,
It is.
and that's kind of the more cerebral part. And
Mm-hmm.
part of working on that installation, and with time, when my hand loosened up, I discovered I love drawing musicians, because there's something about the motions. I love drawing dancers because there's some magic when someone is playing live, that they're just glowing, they're just vibrating. And sometimes you manage to capture that. And again, I always use pens, because if you use pencil, you start hesitating. But if you have 5 minutes to draw, the piece is 5 minutes, you can't erase. So you kind of jump into it, as you were saying with the charcoal before. And that became kind of the underlying tone of that piece. And something that I've been working is the line, not only as a line of thought, but as a vector of movement. So you think then about, I had a dance teacher who used to tell us, don't just dance moving your arm, paint with your arm. Imagine you're tracing, you're cutting space. So imagine the vectors that you're drawing in space as you're moving.
Oh my God.
And it was the most helpful advice. So that's what choreographing turned into with this labyrinth. And at the same idea, the lines of harmony of music. So it's playing with those concepts, so that it's still cerebral, but it's something that I understand in a much more visceral way. So that's kind of the way that the drawing and line making gravitates as vectors and as diagrams. It's a way to understand space, really.
God, I think
That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, I mean, at first you had me with, kind of, you mentioned filigree, and then you said, spread the detail. And then it was like manna from heaven for the rest of it. That was incredible. And I love that you brought up Da Vinci's notebooks, because I do fear that so often he is just, kind of the one big artist most people know, and kind of reduced to a bit of a cliche of eccentricity. And we actually have
people are like, oh, the Mona Lisa. You're like, have you seen the man's notebooks?
No, we have copies of his notebooks here at our studio, and they're absolutely, they're such an amazing testament to all of the genius which can be contained within just neurons of the brain, which again, you take one neuron, one atom in that man's brain or your brain, and it's spreading the detail, it's electrifying everything else, and all of a sudden a drawing appears or a schematic appears. So I think I love that you brought him up, because again, I do fear that people don't appreciate the innovator that he was, and how, again, as you said, they were all drawings. So Sherry,
It's your turn. Lauren, could you tell us a little bit more about how your involvement with with the metal point, because I've been looking at the work that's recent, and they're the different metals and the amount of silver in the work now. And I think there's a kind of opulence that is, you're entering this incredible territory. And
thanks, Sherry.
if you could talk to us about your process a bit.
Sure. So that's a really good question, because I actually, a little over a year ago, my work just kind of took a drastically different direction. Whereas I had primarily portrayed other people, I'm now portraying that which kind of resonates more with me. So everything, it's almost like I'm scrying internally as opposed to paying homage to something in my exterior environment. And I think along with that shift in my head, and it was surprisingly, startlingly quick, and resonated very, very deeply. It also kind of liberated me a little bit in how I am willing to utilize my medium. Gabriella, you mentioned the word play earlier, and I've actually been thinking about that a lot over the last few months in terms of loosening up as much as I can, given that I work in a medium which, like pen, Helena, does not allow really for any erasure. You really have to kind of plot things out a little bit. You have to have a pretty good idea of where you're going with it. Silver Point is very exacting. But I also want to kind of give myself over to this exploration of new ideas in tandem with using the medium in a way that, again, is not necessarily that precious, despite the fact that it is rather persnickety. So, I'm just trying not to feel obligated to going in one direction or another. I'm trying to let the artwork happen to me rather than me happen to it.
That's awesome.
Both in terms, again, of medium and concept. And all the drawings I've done over the last year, each one has been kind of like its own little exploration of what happens if I kind of loosen up a little bit more. And with that comes integrating, a little bit of chroma. I, Sherry, do not have your innate ability to command color. So it's more just like monochromatic washes over a surface that I then kind of draw on top of or underneath. So it's not a lot of modeling in color.
Color's overrated.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I feel like all the drafts people are going to run years there.
People have to remember, it's secondary to draftsmanship. And yeah, I love that you asked me this question, because it's all this stuff that's been bubbling under the surface since like December of 2019, which I've just been thinking about with more focus, or trying to lately. So maybe that's a great there's a lot of like stuff bubbling around and ricocheting in here without much of a planned direction, but I just get a surface ready. I have the image in mind that I want to portray. I'm working an awful lot more from imagination, which is very difficult, because there's a lot of awkwardness in my drawing there that wasn't present before, but I feel like it's more authentic. It comes, more, again, it's all about what's more internal for me. So, I just figure out how to work around it and hope it'll improve. And that I continue making enough work that, it inevitably does. But yeah, it's just kind of like this little bouncy cacophony in here, and I'm just trying to kind of get it onto a surface. So the funny thing is, even though the Silver Point, again, looks very tight and inevitably is very linear, it's all hatch marks, you can't really lift anything. What's so funny is, even under a lot of the drawings, I start with something more gestural, and then I just tighten up on top of it. So kind of keeping the armature the wobbliest bit maybe helps. if that makes sense. So there was a drawing I did recently where, you know, it's an astronaut, it's a spacesuit, and I'm looking at him and I'm looking at the photo reference and I'm like, I can't tell what the hell these proportions are. This is like the Michelin Man. It's super bubbly. I don't know where elbows are, where are my bony landmarks, what's going on underneath. So I kind of ditched the photo reference and I started just drawing from imagination the body underneath. And then I was like, oh, okay, that actually doesn't look too bad. And it's very helpful. And then I kind of ended up keeping the drawing of the body
Oh, that's the
underneath.
one where I love that one. It's awesome. It's like you can see through the
I wasn't planning on that. I was just like, I need to have an idea of where like the rib cage and the pelvis are at, like,
that's so enjoyable.
What's
Drawing is
going
so awesome.
Yeah. So the drawing after it that I'm doing now, like I didn't need to do that. So it just didn't happen. But this drawing is going to go in its own direction too. So, and again, this is a very long-winded way of saying, you know, as these different ideas happen, I'm willing to kind of forfeit my preconceived notions of the medium in tandem with that. That took me a really long time to articulate. Geez, you guys are gonna be like, she's a writer. Why did she need?
It was a good walk.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
And it's great because I think that was probably the most I've articulated about my new works ever, to even to my husband who's around me all the time. So thanks, Sherry, because that's going to help with like artist statements and stuff now.
Yeah.
And Sherry, I am dying to hear you speak about your work because you pretty much portray only women in your drawings.
Yeah.
Sculpture too. So how does the drawing and your content kind of work together, given what you depict?
Oh, that's so interesting. Let's see. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking how we all relate to other art forms a bit, right? Writing and Helena and, you know, even science in ways, right? So I find a lot of sort of literary things feed my work. So I'm not sure if I'm answering you directly, but it's what I was thinking about while you were talking. So, and I was thinking, oh, I can actually explain this to these people here, that like one of the first drawings I did that had to do with narrative had to do with the story of Actaeon. And I had read a beautiful piece by a professor at Princeton. His name's escaping me, but it was how in this myth about Diana and Actaeon, that Diana and Actaeon are actually one and the same. They are both the hunter and the hunted. And I was like,
oh my God.
Oh, and so in the drawing, there is no Actaeon present, but Diana is looking out. So Diana is gazing at Actaeon, where the story usually is that, you know, I put it's a switch of gender, but a switch of role really. And in it, there's several things taking place in time. There's another figure is witnessing her looking at Actaeon, and another figure is seeing the future and covering her face. So, but it came from this idea of the hunter and the hunted and it being the same out of that. But now I'm not thinking so specifically because I just have, sometimes I'll get excited by a word like lapidarium, you know, and I'll want to do more things in blue. And I've been reading, I think my work is very involved in dream. And I really think so. And really more and more consciously. And I've been interested in different ways writers use dream and how Shakespeare uses dream for imagery. Because I was thinking that, I know Helena was saying that the word is like a symbol. And I always think, oh, it's like two things that come together to mean something bigger than it is. If that makes sense. So I've been playing around with certain ideas, like Shakespeare has like a play in a play. Like Oberon says, you know, the donkey in the middle of Midsummer Night's Dream says, let's make a play. And so I'm like, have like two dancers in a room, and the artwork is about the art, or I'm putting a painting in the piece, or I'm playing with some of these ideas now. And it's making me think about space differently, because I heard this quote, what is a dream but a sense of place or a sense of space? So sometimes it's very fictional. The space not real, and then sometimes I'm requiring something very different, like I want to make steps and you can like move through it and you can see in a mirror, and so I have these two things going on now. I'm thinking about more real space and more dream space.
Oh, wow.
I love that.
Yes. So thinking like that. I've been looking at some of the feminist surrealists.
Like Remedios Varo. She's a Spain Mexican lady, and I'll put it into the chat.
I've been thinking about like Dorothea Tanning, or
yes,
that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm working a lot of the time, all the drawings begin with a big brush and a big paper, and I dip it in charcoal powder. Beautiful. And let's see what happens. And then of course there's the point where I say I'm in trouble, but I don't think that's a good way for me to phrase it. I think it's here we go, because I've done this thing, and then it's not necessarily, the head is not like in the place it needs to be, or something like that, and thus the movement begins. It's a different phase, but I'm getting very used to it now and saying, oh, well, that's what happens, And then sometimes I stop, and I'm happy to just have whatever moment happened. I gave you some images like that where I'm just, let's do it.
Oh, man.
And I stop, and it's just the lines. And I think it's a way of my being present and attentive and being in the moment, and then a way of knowing myself. So again, these two opposite things of these fast, like line drawings, and then things that can go on for a year.
Oh God, that's awesome. And I think the thing that's so gratifying to hear each of you speak about is how none of your the trajectory of your studio really is a trajectory going up. None of you guys are stagnant. You're not static. You're not at a plateau. You guys are progressing. You're exploring. You're keeping things moving. And I think that even if it's unconsciously done, it's so great that your own artwork kind of rebels against complacency. It's always looking for something bigger. And I think that's a very noble pursuit that has not really been ascribed to women for a lot of our history. The guys always get to go slay the proverbial dragon. So for us to all be in an arena where you can always kind of be looking for that next challenge is it's very liberating. It's very liberating. So the next thing I want to ask you guys, and Sherry, maybe we'll start with this question, because you also make sculpture, is if you use other mediums besides drawing, how does it relate to drawing? Or for you guys who primarily draw, if you had to cheat on drawing with another medium, what would you do? So Sherry, can you talk to us a little bit about your sculpture too?
Yes, because I love that you use the word line as as our entree for today, because I think of drawing as being very conceptual. A line doesn't exist in nature. I am making something that just isn't there, right? Yeah. It's dust on a page, meaning making, lines. It's all like a fiction. It's it's a parallel world. And then sculpture is different, right? Because it's physically in a space, and I feel passionately about sculpture. I really, really do. However, to find its poetry is a different thing, because a sculpture isn't a small shrunken figure, right?
Yeah.
So there's the problem. There's this beautiful book by Adolf Hildebrand, The Problem of Form, and about the space metering itself the way equal lines might meter themselves, and so on. So I try to find areas in my work, in my sculpture, where that can happen, that I can create this sort of other world that drawing can create. So I did another Diana piece and her dogs. My dog was right over there. But where I tried to reverse things, I took a big block of clay and I cut into it so I could feel like I was moving through real space. You know, like, you know, when you dance, you go like this, or you go like this, or right? And then it also revealed itself the way it feels like the drawing's coming up to me, the same way dust off the page. So I feel like I started to touch on something in that sketch I did that allows it to exist in a realm that felt exciting to me.
Oh, I just read.
Was that clear?
Yeah. I just read a great quote by, hold on one moment. Thanks. I have a great tech guy. I just read a great quote by a poet who I think really influenced Cy Twombly. I think it was something like form is an extension of content, or form is just an extension of content. I read that and I was like, ugh, you know, like so obvious, but why have I never realized that before? So it's really beautiful again that, you know, there's a cadence and a rhythm within your drawing, and you carry that through to your sculpture as well, which is it's awesome. And we'll have images of I'll grab some images of your sculpture to have up too. So then I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Gabriella, who started, you know, who came right out the gates with all drawing all the time. If you could cheat on drawing with another medium, what would you be tempted to get into?
To be fair, I mean, I was thinking about it when Sherry started talking, in terms of like how you said about cheating on it. And I was like, all right, so maybe Sherry's sculpture and drawing is like a love triangle, because she, it's, I mean, what I understood is that she equally appreciates both drawing and sculpture. Like, you know, if you're probably doing both because you cannot pick one, and they both serve different things for you, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I definitely mainly favor drawing in all kinds of levels, in the sense that, for example, I mean, when an artist does drawings and paintings, I tend to favor the drawings.
That's interesting.
For example, yeah. I mean, I don't know how that works, but I just tend to favor the drawings. I don't know if it's because I have like this huge bias for drawing. I definitely, I mean, that doesn't, you know, having such a strong bias in favor of drawing doesn't stop me from wanting to play in other fields as well. Because I mean, I have painted both with oils and acrylic paint. I have done sculpture and enjoyed it. I like to do more like craft, quote unquote, type stuff, because I really like reusing things and recycling things and upcycling things. So I love doing collage, for example. And it's just like really, I like to play. Yeah, I like to play with other things, but how do they relate to drawing or inform drawing? I start mumbling now because I'm not sure exactly how does it come, you know, because I just will go back to drawing again, and it's almost like rather, I don't know, in some ways, I feel rather like drawing informs the other things, or sometimes the other things are a progression from a drawing. Like, for example, sometimes the next logical step is to add color. And sometimes the next logical step is to go into a collage. Like once or twice, I've definitely made a collage out of my own drawings, for example.
Very cool.
Or a collage where there is cuttings from a magazine, but there's also my drawings incorporated in there. So I was thinking a little bit, maybe it would be applicable in the sense of like polyamory, like going off of the love triangle from Sherry and her drawing and sculpture. It's kind of polyamory in the sense where you sort of have like a main, I mean, that's different for everyone, but like there is like a main person, I guess, and like my main person is drawing. And then sometimes I play with other people.
Yes.
But and it like playing with the other people doesn't take away from the main person necessarily, but I play with them anyway just because I am curious. But then I just always come back to the main person, and yeah, I mean they're kind of connected and not connected in a way in between, you know, like the way, and I mean in the sense. A similar sense how everything, there is a connection with everything, you know, like all the systems within the body are connected and they all relate to each other, sort of. But I might have to think about it for a little while to see how, to see if I can verbalize how those things relate to drawing or drawing relates to them. Because I can't think of, right this minute, I can't really think of a concrete or something that sounds reasonable to me.
So
Oh,
no, you proved,
exactly the same thing.
yeah.
Do the collages make your drawings fresh for you, in a sense?
Kind of, yeah. It's I feel like the handful of times that I did that, it was a way of, yes, refreshing is a really good way of putting it, because I try really hard to not make more trash. So I didn't want to just throw them away, you know. So like that's a really good way of putting it, because it's like I don't hate the drawings necessarily, but they just don't like serve me in the same gratifying way that other drawings that I want to keep serve me. But then yeah, effectively putting them together in a different way and maybe putting shellac on them or something, I don't know, effectively refreshes them for me and makes me, has definitely helped for me to appreciate them in the way that another drawing that I have not wanted to throw away gratifies me. So yeah, that's a really good way of putting it for sure.
So this is
There was
perfect.
a quote. Oh,
No, it's
there was
not.
a quote. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Sherry. You go, Sherry.
I was searching for this quote before we met, and I can't find it, so I'm going to have to paraphrase it. But it was exactly what you said. That you can go into any master's studio and pull a scrap off the floor, and it's better that he drew, and they drew, and it's better than any painting in the room. And I think we're talking about that today.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's perfect, because the thing is, what you're saying, Gabriella, is it's not cheating if it's an open relationship. You know, it works really perfectly. And when Aurora's back, I want to ask her, because I saw her nodding a lot, Gabriella, with what you were talking about. So I think Helena, I cannot fathom what beautiful things you will have to say about.
Oh my. I actually have questions. I'm really bad at interjecting. I always have the urge to like raise my hand.
Me too.
Right? Oh, sorry. But Gabriela, do you ever find that when you're reformatting your drawings and into a collage, do you find that fragmentation is a helpful part of that process? Like, do you cut them, or do you keep them whole and then combine them? Or I'm curious about that, like the issue of fragments and like reconfiguring those.
I haven't done it in a while, so, but I mean, I do both for sure. Once or twice what I did was actually photocopy the drawings. speaking of not making more trash, but once or twice I photocopied the drawings several times, and then I used those to make a collage, and I effectively used both. I used some of the photocopies whole, cutting out the wherever the contour of the drawing was, and then cutting the photocopy of the drawing up. But I also did that very same thing in a way when I was using like the original drawings. Another time where, I mean, even if I didn't cut the, like, if it's a portrait, for example, I didn't cut through the portrait, but I still glued something on top of it, covering part of the portrait. So that's kind of fragmenting in a way, just because that other now covered part of the drawing is not visible anymore. So I guess that is kind of fragmenting in a way.
Yeah, it's an interruption. Huh.
Yeah, it kind of is an interruption in a way, or just like making that part go away by covering it with something else. But I'm not sure that I guess because I haven't done it really that many times, I'm not able to really verbalize what exactly the thought process is. But kind of once the drawings are cut, and I'll put one down. I mean, I guess sometimes I would have like a vague idea of what I wanted to do with them, but I cut them out, and then kind of sometimes things will fit together right next to each other, like the contours will fit together. And other times, like once I put down a couple of things, I guess I was able to sort of see another drawing and be like, oh, this part of this drawing will fit in here. And then that would lead to cutting the other drawing, not through the like outermost contour, but then cutting a fraction of the drawing, I guess. So it kind of, it's kind of something that builds. I think something like this was mentioned before. It kind of gets built up as like once I had already started.
Yeah.
Something.
It sounds more improvisational.
Yes, for
you,
sure.
You build on what is. Oh, that's interesting.
That's really cool. So, if you guys don't mind, Aurora, now that you're back, I noticed that when Gabriella was talking about, how she sometimes works with other mediums, you were nodding your head a lot. For you, again, are there other mediums in which you're interested besides drawing that it kind of leads into, or is it pretty much just?
No, I guess I'm like really when you talk. I mean, what you said, Gabriella, was exactly what I would have said in English, in French. This is really almost the same words, because I also think that we have sometimes like a connection with the medium more than something else. And it's just, it doesn't mean we are not curious to look after something else and try different things. And also because sometimes we can start to get bored. So like to always do the same things. Like sometimes I just wake up and I'm so bored with my pencil and charcoal and black and white thing. I need color, and I need some different also movement, because by using another tool, you will also work differently. And sometimes it's just very interesting to like process differently. And for example, when I met you, like Daniel is close to me, it's just like artistically, it was super interesting for me to see someone working on like volume, like being with someone who is like to sculpt all the time, and just to look at him working, and sometimes me touching the clay. It also had an impact in my drawings. And when I met him, I really started to work. I was more interested by volumes, and also I've not sent some pictures of it, but we had some collaboration with drawing on his sculpture. I don't know if you have it. I don't know, like this is like a drawing directly on his like a buste. You remember?
Yeah, like she would draw directly on some plaster casts.
Yeah, and what I made.
Oh, that was awesome. Yes. I remember
Yeah,
that.
and so this one I've not shown this one, but this is usually I'm more interested to collaborate. So because I love so much working drawing, when people come to me because they want to like work with me, there will be more like a different medium mixed. So I will work on like a photo, or I will work on a sculpture, but I will mix and try to draw differently, because the support is. So, but yeah, me too. I'm also very interested by different media and surfaces, but I will always return to the pencil and to the charcoal. It's like
You go pretty far into pastel sometimes.
yeah, I don't know if I also send you some pictures of. You want to when you're talking
so.
to the
Maybe I
release
should-
better like
maybe
to.
not a disembodied voice. I was just
So-
gonna.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
So guys, this is Aurora's husband, Dan Williams. If I forgot to introduce him earlier, he is an amazingly kick-ass sculptor. You
Yeah,
guys
he
should
is.
definitely check
Fucking
out
awesome.
his work. And thank you, Dan, for taking your time to be. Again, Aurora, your English is amazing, but Dan is on hand to potentially help with
It is.
translation.
It's just when as she's talking about her work, my brain is just like going off. Like there's so many things I want to say about her work and what she does, but I don't want to talk over.
So now
I
you
just wanna-
can.
I just-
He was like whispering. We should not say that.
No, she Aurora is so something that strikes me about her as an artist is how prolific she is. She never stops working and just keeps going and going and experimenting with new things, but it's in a way that it's not so much just take a blank piece of paper and do whatever. She uses Photoshop endlessly, and she's always looking for inspiration, and she's really captures faces so well, and she's always looking for new and interesting faces to pull into what she does, and she has hundreds of these like little 12-inch charcoal faces just everywhere in her studio, and this all like contributes to when she's designing bigger, more elaborate pieces. But when it's her big elaborate pieces, she'll spend like days on Photoshop, like tweaking composition and getting it right before she even starts on the paper.
That's
And
fascinating.
She's fairly exacting when she goes into her more like elaborate stuff. And then she tends to keep her looser, more exploring stuff on like a small scale, and like she'll see a face and it inspires her. She grabs it and she's like, all right, I'm gonna draw that for the next 5 hours. And it's amazing. But I don't know. So this is just like when you guys were talking about like just how you get started, it just made me think so much about how she gets started that she wasn't letting on so much. I really wanted to talk about for a little bit.
So thank you. That's why you are
Yeah,
here.
that's very good. So I see her work. I see her work every day. I know exactly what she's doing every day, and it's really it's awesome to be kind of an observer. I love to like sneak into the studio and be like, what are you doing now?
Well, and that's fascinating because it also goes to show that Aurora, I would consider Photoshop its own medium. I mean, my God, talk about having to know what the hell you're doing with that. I mean, I would definitely consider, and again, it's kind of like, it sounds like you use exactly like how Gabriella kind of uses collage. So we definitely have to do a future. I never got around to organizing it, a future live stream of like artist couples with you guys, Sherry, you and Ted, my husband who's off camera running tech. Thank you, Brett. But I think that's fascinating, Aurora, that you can sidestep into a digital media also.
Yeah.
And then Helena, again, you are our multidisciplinary goddess. So when it comes to what because you don't just limit yourself either to just what you could define as strictly visual arts. You have experience in dance. You were talking about integrating math. So I think you gave us a really great overview earlier, but if you want to talk a little bit more about how all of these things kind of intercept, it would be
Of course.
super fulfilling.
Thank you. No, I'm kind of the thing that's going on in my head right now, and it's so funny when we're talk about polyamorous relationships, and that terrible saying that's like once a cheater, always a cheater. And I feel like
that's
I
true.
tried. Oh man, when I went to the academy, I tried so hard. Like, you are a painter now. You are going to paint. Paint is your life now. Like, smell the paint, be the paint, all the whole thing. Couldn't do it. Absolutely couldn't do it. Just because then in walks someone like Grimaldi or Dan Thompson. You see their anatomical drawings and just,
Oh yeah.
are you kidding me? And then you see like Judy Fox teaching sculpture, and it's like, well, I'm going to sneak into that class clearly. And then you see marble carving going on over there, and you're like, well, I want to hack some marble. So it's been there's a point when I finally stopped resisting the call to sticking to that analogy, not even try and have a primary partner. Just like not even, just full out polyamory all day every day. Just even no playing favorites. And I think it is really hard to balance, and especially, you know, because it's not only visual, it's not only like the sculpture, the printmaking was like my primary medium when I started out, just out of chance. And the line was so important there, because then you're really thinking about every single line you make, because when you dump that plate in the acid, it's there to stay. You know, and trying to subtract a line is pretty impossible. But then that also gets you started thinking about layers, and layers, I don't know. I think it's hard to keep that balance. I mean, right now printmaking is really difficult because, you know, without a press.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's maybe like liner cuts, but but I think talking about disciplines that inform other disciplines, sometimes, you know, you're in the studio, and I've been frustrated with for, I mean, actually the past couple of years is I stopped writing music. I kind of started. My music theory is not great, but it's very intuitive, and sometimes there's like a shape in a sculpture or a shape in a drawing or something that you kind of like think of it in other terms and how they relate to each other, and it is refreshing. It's and it really is like a problem. It is problem solving. When it becomes too cumbersome, when your brain is tired, when you can't really solve that avenue, it's how to like take a step back, do something else, or kind of like take up the mentality of a different discipline to tackle the same problem from a different angle. Because it's a little bit thinking about sculpture and drawing, how sometimes taking a sculptural approach to drawing can solve a multitude of problems. You know, kind of like the study of anatomy, how knowing the figure inside and out, like in 3D, and not only like looking at a diagrammatic drawing of it, but really knowing how the thing connects can help you fix a problem in 2D. You know, so it's a challenge to kind of like keep tabs, but I think it's very rewarding. And right now, I think I guess the direction right now of all of those different disciplines is trying to break them down into like bite-sized manageable formats. Because what I started in 2019 with the Labyrinth and the Monster, actually, I want to turn it into a whole series. I want to make a whole bestiary. So it's not a monster and the Labyrinth.
Oh my God.
Oh man. And actually collage played a huge part of it, because I was stuck, you know, that plateau, and you're just kind of, okay, we have like tiny things going on, but not a big thing. And collage was the answer. There was a master class with Sarah Peters, and she instructed us to go to the Met, take a fuck ton of pictures, sorry for the word, but just like to take all the pictures you want, you know, and then print them out and take pictures of your work and just go crazy. Collage time, go. And all of these images started coming together, talking about, you know, fragments of Greek sculptures, fragments of the, you know, the type of body language and movement that you see in someone else's piece of art, and then interrupted with your own artwork. And I started seeing a whole collection of monsters that started coming out of that. And that's, I mean, right now having performative installations is a big fat shrug, because the importance of performance and installations is the space, is the presence, is that it's something that is happening in front of your eyes, and it's really hard to document, because you can only film it, you can only photograph it, but the magic of it is what you are sensing when you're standing there and you're like seeing it and smelling it, you know. And but working, you know, drawing has been the kind of the biggest thing that I've been able to do, because like then from the collage, then you can start thinking and like throwing a little bit of a brainstorm, like what is the space for that monster going to look like? What is that environment going to look like? And then you start sketching the sculptures, and you can kind of start doing little maquettes of what they look like. And then based on what that looks like, you can start kind of composing the music. And I love collaborating with musicians. Like all of my best friends from college are musicians. And my partner too is amazing contrabass player. So then talking with them about what kind of music will inhabit that space that comes with that character, and then the movement. So it all kind of, it does start all with a kind of the idea, and then it fleshes out in drawing, especially now that it can't really happen in physical form. So it's kind of all blueprints now. But yeah, I think yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No, finish the thing.
Oh, I wanted to like loop Cheryl back in, because what you were saying about dreams, the dreams play a hugely important role in my practice. And I wanted to ask you if you've read Life is a Dream by Pedro Calderón de la Barca.
No.
Oh my God.
Writing that
I'm
down.
sorry for you. There's a phrase in that. It's basically like they kidnap this prince and they keep kind of making him like wake up as a prince and then back as a prisoner and then back as a prince and then back as a prisoner. He's going crazy and he doesn't know what is real anymore. And there is this, it's from the golden age of theater and literature in Spain, like Baroque times. Yeah, almost contemporary thing to Velázquez. And he just, these beautiful monologues, you're just like, oh, this is what, this is Spanish verse is supposed to be like. And there's a part where he's just, what is, ay, ¿qué es la vida una ilusión?
Life is an illusion?
See, I remember it in Spanish, but I think I have it here actually, because I was looking at it.
We'll put all of this in the
2 days
description
ago.
for the video too on YouTube, so that anyone watching
Amazing.
That's,
I found it here, but that's in Spanish. What is life? A tale that is told. What is life? A frenzy extreme, a shadow of things that seem, and the greatest good is but small. That all life is a dream to all, and that dreams themselves are a dream.
God.
And those are the layers of drawing, of meaning, that you can trace them, try to kind of convey what's going on in your head. And it's kind of never enough. But it's a shadow. I don't know if I'm speaking gibberish at this point.
Yes,
not
no. It makes
Not
so
at
much
all.
sense to me. I was reaching for this other piece of paper to say something, but there's I was once in Rome and I was with a bunch of scholars and they were having a meeting about the hypnoeratomachia polyphily. And they all knew what this was, but I didn't.
We need Daryl Smith to
found out
translate.
fast.
I know, where's Daryl?
Well, what was so fabulous? Well, it's it comes before Dante, and it's a story of someone who's in a dream dreams. Okay, and it takes place among ruins of architecture, and that story, just images from it have it's about love in a dream, basically. His search for love in a dream in an ancient world. It's beautiful. I also love, of all the fairy tales in the world, Spanish fairy tales are my favorites by far, because the kind of transformations in them. But they really are. They're anyway. Thank you. That's wonderful.
That play is beautiful.
Yeah,
and it's kind of that, and it's the same about dreaming, and the same goes to installations. The same goes. It's kind of those parallels, like what recognizable things are going to make it resonate with you, and how can you dislocate reality enough that you're dreaming.
Yes.
This is amazing, because I always kind of think to myself that drawing is the most transparent art form. Like, you really have nowhere to hide, not just your own hand, but your own psyche, your own ethos, the multifaceted layers of your own, id, ego, and superego are all kind of on display too. But I also love how you guys are speaking about, how drawing is kind of a spider web, reaching out to different things, because that's been drawing's role for most of history, or at least within Western art history. It's been a way of charting things out, and not only until the last maybe 2 or 3 few centuries has it been regarded as its own, independent art form. So to hear you guys speak about how drawing is, again, like, kind of links up with other things, really kind of means that it's never lost that inherently interconnected virtue that it has, which to me is really, really poignant. I guess, I mean, my bias would just say, drawing is kind of at the center of a lot of the artistic universe, which goes, back to Sherry saying, color's overrated, and the controversy that might cause. But
Yeah.
I think it's again, it's phenomenal to see that lineage organically continue through. So, oh my God, I had some questions, but I keep forgetting them because what you guys are saying is just like, it's so great.
Before we moved away too far away from this last question, I want to ask Elena about because you also dance, and because you've drawn cadavers, and because you discover this whole anatomy stuff, and because you draw. So I would like to know specifically how, if you have found a connection between dancing, and I think you kind of said something that relates to that, between dancing and drawing, because, and I ask that because I have posed in art classes, and I have a gut feeling, or I have an instinct that tells me that somehow that made my drawing better. And so I do exercise and I move every day. And I also feel like that somehow helps my drawing of the body as well, except that I have no fucking clue how, and I cannot put into words exactly how it is effectively helping, but I feel like it does. And so since you also draw, and since you maybe more consciously, I don't know, dance as because you're a interdisciplinary artist. So maybe you have like maybe you've been able to put into words that aren't like a cult leader talking in abstract ways, how that connection happens. So yeah, if you, I don't know if you could like maybe, I don't know, talk about if it's like, how does dancing inform drawing for you, or if you have found this connection?
I most definitely. I love that question because I'm always pestering my students, and they kind of hate me, but then they love me for it. I tell them, stand in the same pose as a model.
Yes.
And they do so, and and then like they stand, and for like 3 seconds I'm like, no, stay there. Stay there for a whole minute, and I tell them, like, notice what hurts, what is straining, where is your weight, how are you balanced, like how are you, because especially with the human figure, it's like when we're talking about drawing something from the imagination, so seeing it from something that's inside versus drawing from life something that's outside.
Yes.
And it is really hard to understand something that is extraneous to us if we don't interiorize the concept first. So I think dance provides a way of knowing the body in a very, and it's the vocabulary does exist. I think there's even like a vocabulary specifically for choreographing, which is like a shorthand for saying like what goes where. I'm not an expert in that. I'd love to learn that. Sounds amazing. Another language to add to the bucket list. But it's there is definitely, and you see it also with athletes, there is an awareness, a self-awareness of the body in which and it's interesting because it's sensations, but when you notice pain most of all, because it's like when something is going on, and there's like the good pain where you're stretching, you're just like, that's the ticket. And there's the bad pain where you stop short and you say, like, I messed something up. Like that's the bad pain. But it's a way, and where, looking at and having the amazing experience of working directly with cadavers, it was incredible seeing like the one tendon and being like, you were killing me that one time. And you still remember, and many times when you're seeing a model posing, you kind of start paying attention to what is straining. And if you felt that before on your own body, you kind of have a better idea of what position you were in, you know, when you were feeling that. So it's all a mechanism of pulleys. And I think like studying anatomy is so beautiful because it's a perfect machine. No, but then really getting to viscerally know how it feels helps you understand how to render it from the outside, knowing what it feels like from the inside. I think
Yes.
that's really
the
poignant.
most cohesive way, I think.
I
try and
find
explain it.
it's surprising how much I think when I'm working from life about how this was a few years ago. For several years, I got really into cycling and commuted all over New York and got doing quite a bit of endurance cycling, including actually, you know, going up from where we lived in Queens by where Sherry lives up the Hudson. And that was like a solid 20 pounds in a much better resting heart rate ago. But I remember thinking, you know, in cycling, you think, oh, it's really relegated to your lower body. But I remember catching myself aware of how, especially when you're sprinting in traffic in Manhattan, it's not just a contraction of all these huge muscular groups, you know, kind of weaving in and out of your pelvis, but how I would pull my arms up in opposite force to whichever leg was going down to even diminish the amount of weight on my handlebars so that the weight of my upper body bearing down while my lower body was torquing was even kind of minimized. And that was, you know, it just made me aware of certain pushes and pulls and weight distributions that I don't ever articulate enough here at our studio when we have people in working from life and it's instructed. So I really, I'm really amazed that I was never like an athlete or anything growing up. Certainly not a dancer. You don't want to see me try that. But I'm endlessly appreciative. You need like a lot of tequila or something. But all right. We'll do a part 2 happy hour. But I'm endlessly appreciative of just having had that level of fitness and physical activity because it allowed me to kind of be aware of what the human body was capable of. The other thing, usually these go for about an hour and a half. We've hit that, but I think this conversation is just so phenomenal. If you guys don't mind, I do have one more question that I would love for you guys to tackle, taking all the time or interaction you need. And that, you know, again, you know, I mentioned earlier how all of you guys have this upward trajectory within your studio practices, this evolution. And, you know, 2020 was obviously a year to which everyone can give the middle finger. But given that we have just started a new year, that you guys are constantly exploring new ideas and creating new things, we'll start with Gabriella. What do you have in mind for your future work?
What I want to do with my work is learn more about the body. I don't know how far I can stray from the portrait because I really tend to kind of just like hover back into it, you know. But I mean that doesn't take away from the other loving the rest of the body, you know, because I would like to get more into study hands more, for example, and just like the musculature of the torso and the you know, front and back and like the leg musculature and all of these things. And I also want to also study more from just nature in general, like and actually no, I mean everything. That's another thing I wanted to ask Helena. Are you a Gemini? Because we're like we like invented procrastinating. And just not procrastinating, that's inaccurate. Just wanting to just taste everything. So I also want to learn more about the internal things, like for example, I have like just internal and external. I want to draw everything, and so I want to. I started a drawing of like the female reproductive system. So I have like a uterus and the ovaries.
Wow.
But I have I have like a bee waiting for me to finish her drawing too. So I'm a little bit too scattered right now to be able to zero in on one specific subject matter. So unfortunately, that is the closest thing to a goal that I have, which is draw more stuff I want to draw.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's the trajectory inching upwards. That's wonderful. And Aurora, you had mentioned that your work now tends to be a little bit, quote unquote, lighter than it was before. What kind of drawings do you anticipate making in the future? Are you going to keep in that direction?
I really also want to focus on anatomy also. I guess I still have a lot to learn and to learn from like books and anatomy and so in the future I think I will also work a little bit with some editing house, editing house, and it's more focusing on illustration. So I don't know where specifically my work will go, but sometimes I have the feeling I really want to like focus on anatomy and still working on very classical drawings, but also going again back to my first steps when I started like university. It was like infography designer.
CD, like commercial design, more
like
design.
You know, when
drawing.
you work on tablet, and I kind of like attempt to work more numeric drawings and start new things. I think I'm for the next like this year, I guess I would be interested to try new like mediums and different way to
all the drawings do for me, yeah.
The drawings I do for me, yeah.
Yeah, she does. We have like a whole new gallery of. She's done so many like bird and animal and wildlife drawings for our daughter. Like we have all these new like pastels and acrylic paintings. It's a whole new side I haven't seen before. So it's really nice to see.
Yeah, at least I have a lot of like potential collaboration with people, and can be really different things. It can be like to draw on like glasses. I have a friend who works on I don't know the word in English, like
stained glass.
Vitrail for like church.
Stained glass.
Yeah. So all the time
cool.
I'm thinking about like different things, and because I'm very interested to like, as I told you, like collaboration for me is always so interesting. So I'm really open to any kind of doors to be open. I mean, yeah. So yeah, we'll see. This is pretty much this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot, and it sounds awesome.
But thank you.
So Helena, what do you have in store? 2021.
What's cooking?
What's cooking?
What's cooking? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Gemini. I'm actually a Libra, which might as well, just like trying to balance everything out, never quite managing it. Jesus H. Christ. It is a challenge. Yeah. I think I looked at my horoscope once. All of my signs are water and air and a single fire.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no. So it's all emotion and dreams. So let's see how that goes. That bestiary really is kind of and it's going, I know that it's going to take a very long time, but it's always in the back burner. And it's a bit frustrating because in 2020, I wanted to bring that, those two different monsters because the whole idea is for the installations to be portable. And we're talking almost like theater props, like how do you design them so that you can pack them in a suitcase and like take them wherever. So it was going to be presented in Italy and Germany, and then of course the plague happened.
Oh, how badass are
So
you?
that's
cool.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, it would be, but it's on hiatus, but it'll happen at some point.
Yeah.
But that's good. It gives more time to work on them, and I guess you know, for now it's making the concept stronger, trying to bring those to life, maybe with less impetus, but more slowly, like in a more meditative way. And
Mhm.
there's something, I definitely need to get back in shape because I stopped dancing. So like it's gonna take a while to get
Mhm.
back to where we were, but I think working on, well, the schematics are there, to kind of
Mhm.
working on the individual components and, you know, letting them serve as inspiration. So maybe if I can't bring them to life right now at the second, you know,
Mhm.
because what gallerist in their right mind is going to allow like an interactive installation, you know, in a confined space,
Mhm.
but then draw from them, make prints out of them, like make character studies from those monsters that are already have already kind of started, they become their own creatures, you know, like when
Mhm.
you're drawing and suddenly there's a point in which the drawing starts looking back at you and
Yeah.
it's
Mm.
Yes.
its own creature. They're there, just need to
Mhm.
like start bringing them down.
Mhm.
So there's something about the concept that I think it really speaks to what we're doing today, which is ladies who line, because
Mhm.
all of the monsters that I work with, all of them are female. And it's very much about the perception of women throughout history and how at points we have been taught to perceive ourselves. And it's
Mhm.
about discomfort with the self and the definition of a monster. Like what is an animality? What is ugliness? You
Mhm.
know? And the state of being a woman very often plays into the narrative. And also, Gabriela, I really want to see those drawings of the female
Oh
reproductive
my
system,
God, yeah.
because
Yeah.
please, it's incredible how terrified people have been of that subject throughout history.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like I always notice there's a print that my first etching was like the stages of pregnancy, and then based off on the Museo La Specola in Florence, there's some wax figures in Natural
Mm.
History Museum,
Oh
and there's
yeah.
a beautiful
Heard of
book
that.
of that. There's like a fetus that's still like kind of within the womb, so that's depicted in my etching. That was the inspiration, and a pelvis is an inverted cathedral. It
Mm.
was so interesting how some people were very, very drawn into it, and those people tended to be women,
Mhm.
and some people were really freaked out by it.
Mm.
So that aspect of like the corporeal and the monstrosity, like how
Mhm.
do those relate to each other, that conversation. So I'm just kind of gonna be knitting small works for the
Mhm.
foreseeable future until it's safe enough to bring those to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Sounds amazing. Yeah.
And Sherry, what do you have in store for? Oh, I
Oh,
see you
let's
have
see.
a beautiful studio assistant laying on the floor behind you.
Oh,
Good one.
Tristan the collie.
Cutie.
Yeah, he's the resident lion.
Oh.
So, you know, I had started uh, making Zen circles and feeling that when I was making the line, that it was the space inside that I was thinking about. And so I've been having so much fun dipping a long brush in charcoal and not thinking about the line, but putting my mind somewhere else, or my
Yeah.
consciousness somewhere else. So I started a series, and a horse came out like that. And
Wow.
so I was exploring this idea of the Phaedrus a bit, the story in it about uh, there are two horses, you know, when you're trying to steer them, there's the ignoble horse and there's the noble horse. And I've just been playing with people switching, women switching the position of the horse, and the horse becoming a cavallo magico.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
and I'm also very determined to I've been sketching and collecting all my images for miracle drawings about carrying fire through water, and I have to do it, begin it this year. This is my plan, because you know there's a certain time, sometimes you can carry an idea around, but you don't want to carry it too long.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
the
That's
plan.
so what I love is you know, everyone's work is very informed by being a woman, but it's not stereotypically feminine, which is another reason why I really wanted to hear what you guys had to say in particular, because it really, you know, I worry probably too much that people assume that you're a woman who is an artist, that it's going to be a little bit frilly, a little bit floral, a little bit pinkish, you know, and to show that, you know, of course the fuck not, you know, it's very obvious, you know. So you guys' work it just sounds very, very powerful and very investigative, which is really, really great. I have a challenge in that I find the more that I work from imagination, the more I want to put into my drawing. So I've got to simultaneously like strengthen that ability and also learn how to edit out things more, kind of pare things back. So the drawing behind me was one of the last drawings I did, my previous body of work, and I felt pretty satisfied with my ability to edit out information and just have what I needed to convey kind of dominate the image. And I'm having I don't know, I'm having a little bit, I'm a little bit too exuberant, or at least what exuberant is for me in my recent drawings, and I want to put all the things in the drawings, you know, just want to put everything in one single drawing, and that's not
but Lauren, let's just, what if whenever, just one day that you're like, I'm just gonna do something for kicks, what if one day you just let that shit loose?
Yeah. Pull it.
I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious. I mean, based on what you're saying, that it's just like you're restraining yourself. I mean, not, you know, and not to tell you what to do, obviously. I'm not your real dad or anything. I mean, it's just
funny. She looked like her real dad. Okay.
but you know, one time, you know, like one of those days that you.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Was it just me or did your audio
No,
cut?
but
okay.
I think you haven't answered. I don't know if you were gonna go. Me?
Yeah, no,
Hello?
You're good now. You're good now. You're good.
Oh,
You're good.
okay, cool. No, but I don't know if you were gonna. I don't know if you were gonna answer the same question that we just answered after that. So sorry for interrupting.
No.
But, like, what are you gonna do? What are you planning?
Oh, just again trying to kind of figure out that. I mean, I think, what is it? The opposite. Like you have your sun sign and then your rising sign. I think my rising sign is Libra, which is all about balance, you know, balancing that that push and pull between, you know, like figure the gas and the brake pedal, you know, figuring out a little more concern there. But I have this little tiny etching press in our studio that I got at Zeki in Florence and had sent over to, and it's just the tiniest little etching press, and it can take like maybe a piece of paper like this, and kind of
Baby press.
I know it is. I named it Rosie after the river girl. I know, and I keep thinking, I've been thinking this for a while, like I wanna get back into I wanna make more dry point etchings. And in September, in one day, I just kind of busted out like a little series of 20 dry points, which, you know, were kind of a good launch, a good way to, again, kind of supplement the drawing I've been doing. And I love printmaking. I love the rhythm and the cadence of it. I love how, you know, every little piece is part of a series, yet it's individual. I think if I could really fall down the rabbit hole of like fetishizing paper,
Come here, Tristan.
I'd get going pretty, I'd go pretty far down that hole. But I did just order a bunch of paper from Talus in Brooklyn. And
Nice.
so whatever I'm going to do, I want to start doing more work on, like I love panel, that's on panel. I love the feel of panel. But I think paper affords me a certain scale and portability that I can't get. Like one of my big silver points, if I have a big silver point on a piece of panel, by the time you have to gesso it and everything else, you have to brace the back of it. You have to have a substantial frame. Just logistically, those are fairly hefty. And I like how there's a certain transience to paper.
Mhm.
And so again, that's not really something I would have thought about a year ago. But the way the last year went, my attitude is just kind of like, screw it, just do kind of go where the wind takes me. But I do feel very, at the same time, I want to go kind of more big and portable with my drawings. I do want to get back to that Rosie, the little tiny etching press that I got in Zeki, and it is it's not, it's, Helena, you were talking about printmaking, and I can't imagine, like, it must be impossible to get into a printmaking studio right now. So we just have the etching press like sitting on our little like kitchen countertop. And
Lauren, you're thinking about the smaller prints and then the larger drawings, the
Yeah.
two different things.
yeah,
I was just
That would be
wondering,
interesting.
I'm always finding that there's the two things that are different that pull me.
yeah,
Always.
yeah,
And I'm hearing that a little bit from everybody.
yeah. That's great, and especially like Aurora. My pronunciation of Aurora. You said it so
Aurora.
beautifully earlier. Oh my
Aurora.
God.
Beautiful.
The thought of doing something with stained glass, I was like, whoa, my ears perked up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's you need some skills to do that. I've never tried this, so I'm sure I just won't be able just to go on it like this. I'm sure like I will need to learn a little bit, and but yeah, I'm sure it will be very, very exciting, like just to see what will we say m'amener, let me go on. I don't know.
What will develop, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess with that, we'll wrap this up. I'll sign off on this, and then I have a few more questions afterwards just for you guys. Maybe we'll release that as like a bonus video or something. But I guess with that, thank you to everybody who has tuned in, and thanks to Gabriela and Aurora and Helena and Sherry for participating and sharing their process. Again, this conversation is so resonant because it really proves that, so much of, I think, what we consider to be progress now, we think of just technological, and we conflate that with failing to acknowledge that when voices that typically have not been part of a conversation can suddenly be part of a conversation, of course things are going to roll along with more breadth of conversation and magnificence. So the fact that as women now, we can do something as simple as pursuing art and not having it just be a twee hobby, that we can do something concrete, that we can do something meaningful, that we can make this our vocation, an ardent vocation, to me is very, very powerful. So thank you guys so much for participating, and thank you to everyone who watched.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you for putting it together.